few from the meeting earlier, which is always good to see.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I don't know if you've seen the email that I sent out this morning, but what I'm trying to do is use this as a very practical opportunity, because we've had several of these meetings, and we've obviously got the other meetings that are going on, many of which involve the O&M and health and safety files. So I'm very keen to see if we can actually turn this particular group into the focused area of delivering what the other groups need. Okay. Now, in doing so, I think we're going to need to start to look at the thorny issue of how work is, how contributions are recognised and rewarded. So we need to start looking at how we can turn this into something that. So I don't know what's happened there. Something that's, a commercial entity, as it were. So bear with me a second. I don't know what's happened now. I'm going to stop sharing just for a second because I've got PowerPoint's closed down. Apologies. So, has
George,
anybody had a chance to
just
read?
while you're sorting that out, you've just touched on something. You mentioned it a couple of times, so I'm not quite understanding it. What do you mean by commercial entity? What does that actually mean in this context?
Okay, so let me just explain that.
Yeah.
So, and I'm back again. Sorry, for whatever reason, my PowerPoint closed down. Okay, so if anybody was on the call yesterday, one of the things that I mentioned was that I was speaking with a consultant, and we were talking about, what clients should be doing, how we could advise them to do and what tools we need to be able to check, for example, what as-built and handover information should be. And I mentioned the golden thread, and the guy said, which golden thread? He said, there's two. And I said, okay, well, I've been involved. I didn't challenge him, to be fair, but we as a community have been probably defining what the golden thread is for about 4 or 5 years now. And therefore I was quite intrigued as to what he meant by that. And what he actually meant was the legislation that mentions the golden thread. There are 2 different bits of legislation that mention the golden thread. And he's broken those apart so that it can just deliver what's required, legally required in that particular point. Now, that completely blows, in my view, what the golden thread's about. It's supposed to be about a responsible person identifying what information they need to make sure that the building is safe and operationally sensible, effective. That's what the golden thread actually should be. And my concern now is that one of the reasons we're struggling to get traction in some cases is because the people are being briefed perhaps by people that are looking at minimum levels of compliance. So what I think we need to be doing is pulling together to actually do more than the absolute minimum, because if everybody's just doing the absolute minimum, I don't think we're going to make the progress that we need. Anthony.
Thank you, Joe. I just wanted to underline what you're saying there. I mean, the golden thread is one bit. We also have under the Act and the building regs, BFLO information, which is approved document B. That's essentially Reg 38, approved document L, O, and P. Oh, sorry, BFLO, I think it is. And then we've also got the fire and emergency file and the health and safety file, all of which are legal requirements. And you know, it's wider than the expression, the golden thread.
Yeah, I think that. Thank you for that, Anthony, because obviously you're. I mean, do you just want to explain your credentials in saying that, please?
Yeah, I've been in property management for years and years and years, and I currently sit on the ICC. I also provide training on the building regs to what do you call them? Duty holders.
Yeah.
And quite specifically, my focus, I was on the original BRAC thing, I think with you in the very early days, trying to provide all this. And I also chair the Building Safety Alliance, which represents the occupied sector, who are the people receiving this information theoretically. So there are a number of documents that need to be surfaced in different, so the same information needs to be surfaced under different document titles. And I think it needs to be reflected in the work that we do.
Definitely. So that's so the way we're looking at things. I've also had people say, which regulation 38? Yeah.
Yes, yeah, I appreciate that they've used the same regulation to do two different things. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think the point is, what I think we need to be doing is saying in a pragmatic way, what is the minimum level of information that we actually need, not about compliance, but
yes,
we actually
there are two. I agree. There's two different things. One is what you actually need, and that's the quality of it. But there are also an awful lot of information generally that's required in excess of the golden thread. Key building information is another one. It's the same information but surfaced in a different list, for want of an expression.
Yeah, and what I'm saying. So, Richard, just to explain what I'm saying by this, we are a community of people who are the experts are in a whole range of different areas, and what I think we need to be doing is bringing our expertise together to define what good looks like, and then start to provide that as a baseline standard that people can work to. So you're not asking people for more information than they actually need, which quite frankly is happening at the moment. But you're also making sure that you're asking for the stuff that is really important. Yeah. So where I'm going with this is that we've got people that have signed up to the Golden Thread Task Force in the past. And what we've tried to do is, if they've been along to the meetings and they've attended the meetings, we're asking if they want to be classed as Golden Thread aware, which, it's a badge that we've made up, to be fair. But what we're trying to do is to say, okay, what is the criteria for us to be able to say that somebody isn't going to say when they're advising a client which golden thread? Yeah. So I think if we can get consensus in terms of what that means, and also what as built means. So we're coming across all the time people that are saying, well, we're not providing as built drawings. Everybody's expecting there to be some as built drawings, clients are, but when they ask for that, they'll say, well, it can only be as constructed. Yeah. Or they'll say the information's in the O&M. Go and find it. Yeah. And this, I don't think that's good enough. I think as a group, we need to be more rigorous than that. Pierre.
George, for me, I think the issue, the golden thread, just a title, but the principle behind it is that we're keeping a track of the changes that are taking place. In other words, we need to have a methodology that can actually record these changes because they are significant to a number of different parties, not just one, not just health and safety, but many, many different areas for which we don't necessarily bill or claim a fee for managing that. The other part behind it, I think, is really important, is that it's a sanity check when you have to go back and find something happening. So it's got a broader context, I think, and how we actually offer that. There is the requirement for the safety of that. There's no doubt at all. But we could be getting all these additional benefits for how much extra effort if the automation manages it. That's my initial thoughts on that.
I definitely agree. So one of the things that we've tried to do with the white paper that a lot of us contributed to, and Paul Sheedy then pulled together into a white paper report, which I think is a good document. What we tried to do is move it away from being about compliance. The golden thread isn't just about compliance. It's certainly not just about safety from our perspective. It's actually about providing a lower risk for the clients, and also lower risk for the supply chain, and hopefully also making things cheaper. Because one of the big problems, I think, that's become, it's not my opinion, sorry, one of the things that has become very clear is that people keep doing the same thing over and over again. So what we're doing is we're building into the process tasks that shouldn't need to be done if you can rely on the information that you're getting, and then it means that we can then use more automation, which sadly is needed, because at the moment too much is being done manually. So I've just joined the Get It Right initiative, which I've known about for a long time, but I've not had the bandwidth to be able to do. But I think we're now in a position where the Get It Right initiative, if you're not aware of it, then that's something worth Googling. But if you haven't had the white paper that I'm talking about, which identifies what the savings are, what the practical benefits are, then just put white paper in the chat, and we'll send you a copy. I know I keep saying this, but it's gradually we're getting it out there. It was published in two publications last week, which was good. Matt.
Yeah, really behind this, obviously, George. I'm very keen with it, and obviously we're looking at the kind of reverse piece on it. Now, I'm just kind of wondering how you're thinking we go about this, because I think there is a danger we could just talk and create white papers, or have you got like a sandbox we can mock up and actually start doing some practical things against?
That's exactly what I'm looking for. Cool. So what I'm hoping we can do this afternoon is actually find people in this group, because we've got 41 people on the call, and we've got a lot of people also on the AI and data engineering group. So we've probably got at least 100 people overall. What do you want to do? How do you feel you can contribute? And if you can contribute, how can we do this in such a way that we turn this into something where we can generate some income, which benefits people? So I'm not trying to make this difficult, but if we're putting the effort in, we need to figure out a way of doing that. So if you want to be part of that discussion about how we resource things and how we want to fund it, then, maybe, I don't know, Richard, what do you think we should put in the chat?
Forward.
Forward.
Put
Really?
forward in the chat. And
Okay,
there's a good reason for that, trust me.
Okay.
I think 2 steps back would be better. Go on then.
Yeah.
George, I think I regularly use this, the idea of a scenario and attaching to the scenario, what are the tasks that take place? What is the input and what's the desired output? And then we can find the glue that is the process in between. And the reason behind this is it then starts opening a conversation at a certain stage, at a certain milestone or event. What's going in that's required? Now, from a Revit point of view, here's a family. This is what the objects, the assembly or the part of the model would be. And this is the data that's available. Should we have more? Should we have less? How do we validate and verify and all those sorts of things? But that scenario becomes a little package which can then be applied at different points.
I'm pleased you've said that, actually, because I'm going to come on to doing a little bit of that, because I think that we need to have scenarios to say what goes wrong and how can we prevent that from going wrong. So what information in practice is needed to do that? And we've done some analysis work on a help desk set of information that we've developed, we've acted over the years, and I'm going to get Tim to explain that to you. I'm also going to share with you some of the stuff that we've been doing in the schools working group, where we're actually looking at, what information does a caretaker need? What jobs does a caretaker carry out? And therefore, how can we then help that? So I'm going to share that with you in a few minutes. Victoria.
Oh, hi, everyone. I think this conversation turns really interesting because we start talking about the mapping, the process mapping. And alongside, and I'm not promising, but I just have a question. If my partners will agree, would you be interested to create some kind of a simulation, say on paper, of the very simple process and apply it to the technology and see where the technology can show us? And this is absolutely for free as the kind of test environment I'm doing for another project. And I can see how that might actually fit. And I'm talking about the simulation, and the part which I might help with is the admin labor of who doing what. Did they do it? Did they not?
Okay. Yeah. So this is amazing. This feeds into the next stage of this. So this is where I'm trying to go with the whatever we call this particular entity. So the Golden Thread Task Force is made up of people that are probably the top 5% in the industry, I would say, in terms of understanding why the Golden Thread is needed and also how to deliver it. So my proposition is that we bring together people that understand what the solutions need to look like and glue them together. Yeah, because what's happening at the moment is that people are, for a particular discipline, let's say fire door inspections or something like that, the fire door information, you can have a golden thread that goes back to the factory or even the tree that the wood was cut from, and then going down the track, as it were, to a fire door that's installed and then maintained. Now, that quite reasonably could be said, and certainly the fire door specialists say that is a golden thread. And that's true that it is. But in the context of what we're trying to achieve, it's only one filament in what is a much bigger thing. So therefore, what I think we need to do is have experts with tested solutions, maybe on smoke extraction or compartmentation or ventilation or whatever, so we can bring together people that have got that fundamental knowledge. I mean, Gordon's just popped his head up there. So, corrosion, for example, that's one of his areas of specialization in terms of heating system, not you personally, Gordon. But being able to make sure that that level of information, that knowledge fits into a much bigger thing. Now, our philosophy with this is where I'm trying to get to, is have a situation where people are willing to work together to come up with tested solutions that are at system level that can then be mapped to manufacturers' information, to clients' needs. So the client that has the need for the solution, which is probably quite a complex solution that's made up of different things, can then be brought together. And at the core of it, what we should be doing is using classified libraries so that they are reusable, and we can then use that to make sure that any software applications or standards information are actually using the same taxonomy, and we can work from there. So overall, that's where I think initially I want to try and get to with this group, and expand it from this. So the more people that you can encourage to join this, that's going to help everybody. But I do want to explore. I don't have any answers in terms of how we do this commercially. I think it's going to be initially a basis of being able to do what I think Pierre said at the beginning, maybe have some scenarios to say, how can we ensure that these particular problems can be solved? And the first step is to grab those problems. So Matt Cunliffe gave me one probably a few weeks ago. Matt, can you just explain the university with the leak that the security guys noticed?
Yeah. So use case from university, they wanted an environment where they had their information in such a way that if they had a low technology user, so like a security guard that's on an estate, and they've noticed that there is a leak in a room, that they don't have to ring up obviously the FM contractors and the contacts and the heads of estate to just try and find out where that valve is, where that keep it simple, stupid user could just go into a platform, say leak on level 1 in room 1, how do I isolate? And then it will say valve 1, 2, 3 in the corridor above the ceiling tile. So.
Thank you. So we want some more of those, and that was a real life situation, wasn't it, Matt? It took, I think you said it took them 8 hours to
6 hours it took them to actually find out where the valve was, and obviously that was engaging with their contractors and stuff, and it probably cost them a couple of grand just to get somebody on site to go and turn the valve off. And
probably a lot of leaked water.
Yeah. And then it could have been damaged. I don't know if there was tiles in there or anything, but yeah.
Which, if it was a heating or cooling system, causes corrosion. So the correlation of all these impacts have a massive impact on the building operation and damage that infrastructure. But you don't know what you don't know until you know it. And what we're on the precipice of is the Internet of Things, whether it be air sensors, whether it be corrosion sensors, whether it be whatever it is, they're right here now. We can capture this data. Now, from my point of view, the reason I had my hand up earlier on, George, was to just really support what you've said, all of that, because it's literally, clients are already trying to see the data, prove concept, and then they're trying to get their heads around how they bring it on to, we get asked, can it go into the BMS system? You don't want it anymore on your BMS system. You've got a whole raft of stuff in your BMS system, but nobody's looking at it. All that you're getting is millions of alarms that nobody knows what to do. But you're not just getting signals from devices. You're getting clever devices that are only alerting you to when there's a problem. At the end of the day, I've used the analogy before. You got a smoke alarm in a room when you're cooking chips on your air fryer. There's going to be heat and a wee bit of over temperature that's going to put the smoke alarm off. You don't evacuate the building You open the flipping door, fan it a few times, or brush the flipping air fryer with your hand or something like that. There is a logical, but we all know we do that. You're all kind of smiling at me. That's what we do.
Yeah, can I just reinforce that? So in the operations group meeting this morning, we also run BIM for housing, and we had an operations group meeting this morning. And one of the members was telling us that he couldn't come this afternoon. He wanted to be here, but he couldn't come this afternoon because he's having to go to one of his sites because for several reasons. They've got a few. This is a new build, and what they've found is that there's three areas that he explained. One is that the alarm system, the fire alarm system, when they test it, it's not been isolated. So you've got the social side of things and you've got the market rent side of things. And this is in central London. There's penthouses. So there's probably £3 or £4 million penthouses in this building. And when they test when they go through and test the fire alarm system on the social side, it's connected to the market side, and therefore all the lifts stop working. Yeah. So the whole building, nobody's actually commissioned it in a way that operationally it needs to be used. And he then gave me another example where when people are trying to get out to the bins, their key fobs, in some cases, they don't work to get through the security. So what they do is they smash the alarm thing to be able to open the door, and then just prop that fire door open so that they can get out. Yeah, and you couldn't make it up, could you? But somebody's just not thought through how this in practice is going to be used, and that information needs to be captured. Tom.
It's just a point on what you were trying to explain then, really, around your sort of idea with the group and where you're taking this. So I know a couple of sessions back you mentioned around you're working on tasks and you're trying to work with the likes of Franco to pull that together and understand what tasks need to be done to complete a certain activity. So what you're saying now is, are you looking at, in terms of the group here, them certain tasks, are you going to be doing an exercise to map sort of expertise and how certain individuals can help in areas? Is that where you're going with this?
I think that's an important part of what we should be doing, but I also don't want to overcomplicate it. I mean, if, for example, there's people in here in this group that are fire engineers, for example, or people that are strong on water treatment or whatever, then I'd like them to identify themselves and then say, okay, if we've got a commission, if we've got a client that is looking for an SME to do certain things, how can we do that collectively rather than individually? Yeah. So, and therefore, when, for example, they're asking for information about fire strategy plans, for example, is there a way of doing that so that somebody that's an expert in compartmentation may be able to do that fire strategy plan rather than using a fire engineer? Yeah. So we need to be a bit innovative about how we do this. So that's really, Tom, where I'm coming from with this. And like I say, I don't know the answers, but I'd like to know if people have got the appetite to collaborate in a practical way around that, rather than, I can't remember who said, rather than it just being a talking shop. I think this group in particular should be the doing group. Yeah, so I'm going to stop there for a minute and just ask whether people are up for that. Can I? Sorry, Victoria. Can I just ask if can we actually open it up and get? I'm going to stop sharing because I'd like to pull more people in. into the discussion just to see. Eduardo, where are you from?
Where I work or where I'm from?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, where do you work?
Yeah, no, yeah. Work for SSE and Transmission, Scotland.
SSE, did you say?
Yeah, Scottish and Southern Electricity.
All right. Okay. Okay. So you'd be presumably, would you be? I suppose you'd be both a potentially. Would you be a contractor and also a customer?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, you're right to say that.
Yeah.
Working from the
Good.
client side, but as well we deal a lot with the technical stuff. So actually, we deal as a contractor.
Okay. So who else have we got? I'll come to you in a second, Victoria and Anthony, if I may. Let me see. Peter Monaghan.
Yes, George. My background, we've spoken before, is that I'm in both the new build projects and in facilities management over in Northern Ireland for SRC. I suppose you were talking there about the scenarios. I'm just currently having a look at our data on reactive maintenance to see is it possible to classify it. One of the things that I don't know if it's relevant to this, but I'm part of the Architect Society here in Northern Ireland, and what we did was an exercise where we tried to map types of AI to the RIBA plan of work tasks and outputs. And when we did that, we found that we were repeating the same type of AI, and we came up with about maybe 10 to 12 types of AI solutions. So one of them, say for example, if you're looking to, I'll call it data mine, an O&M manual, or if you wanted to create a generative design, or if you want to render an image, these are all different use cases. But what we found when we looked at the whole RIBA plan of work, there wasn't 100 of these, there was 10 or 12. And you could use the same solution at different stages for the same type of job. So I'm kind of thinking if you took facilities management and handover, then that might be that you could identify use cases that then you could start to look at whether it's an agent or whether it's a chat or whether it's something more like a complex programming. So that's kind of thought. The only other thing I would want to say is, having listened to these conversations, in the college, what we've done is we've taken the asset register, and I'm going to call it that rather than the COBie component or type, and we have used it to create a TIDP for the O&M manual. And we have a number of classifications, one of which is the Uniclass. And so when you have that TIDP, you then have something that you can check the handover with or against. And sometimes when I'm listening to these conversations, I get a sense that we deliver a load of things and then we analyze them, as opposed to knowing what it is we're supposed to be getting before we start. So our TIDP has been created at stage 3 for the handover at the end of stage 5.
I think that would be very useful for us to look at, if you'd be willing to share that, Peter, because we've been working with the HSE with probably for the last 3 years on and off to try and come up with a standardized health and safety file structure, and also standardized O&M. And we've come up with a means of doing that, which we can share with you. And if you're coming at it from the other end as well, that would be extremely useful for us to pull together. I've got one other person to ask, Jason Burke from. Jason, are you there? He's perhaps stepped away for a second. This is always a danger. How about Dexter? What do you do, Dexter?
Hi.
Okay. Yeah.
Hello. I am essentially a digital construction manager, currently
Okay.
working with Universal.
Oh, is that a contractor? I've not heard of Universal.
Universal Studios.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're a digital construction manager. Do you get much engagement with your colleagues that you're handing things over to?
Well, that's it's something that we're working on at the moment.
Yeah.
And we're developing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's something that we can probably help with. So that might the work that Peter's doing and we've been doing as well. I think we can talk about there. I mean, part of the process, what I want to try and do out of this group is add to the work that we've already been doing with in the AI working group, and that's come up with the information requirements. So, in other words, get the knowledge as to what's needed, what good looks like, and therefore, when we're then training agents, AI agents, to be able to do little bits of this work, so we're not trying to use AI in a crude way to do this work. What we're doing is picking off the tasks and then working out how we can actually automate those things. Victoria.
I think that what we're discussing here, can we put the names and our positions and what role we want to play, client side or any side, contractor side, and just to understand who our collaborators are? Maybe that will be easier to understand the capacity of the group. And then the next question probably will be, I might test our software to show how the collaboration is within this group is actually working in terms of the admin handling. And the other thing is, shall we start looking at as the step one from the perspective of the industry, step out of the details of the golden thread and see the golden thread, step one is the contracts, and review where the contracts influencing, how they influencing the golden thread delivery. And then when we build a very simple mapping around it, then each group, I mean, it is a contractor or designer, can start walking down into the details.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah, I think we should do that. In fact, actually, we're sort of halfway into the meeting. Can you just put in the chat to say whether you want to be part of that discussion? I think, Richard, did you say forward? Put forward into the chat.
Yeah, put forward into the chat. We've got about 15 already. So if anybody else wants to join that, please do.
Yeah, so we've got 40 people on the call. Only 15 have put their names in there, which is fair enough. If you don't want to be involved in it going forward, then that's fine. You may just want to be a consumer, and that's fantastic. But if you do want to be actively involved in it, let's have your name down, because then we can do what Victoria said there, and that's identify who's doing what, and then we can map it out.
The key word you said was actively involved.
Yes.
Actively. Yeah. This is very much down and dirty, get involved, do something. It's not a spectator sport, put it that way.
Well, that's absolutely right. We don't want you to then just put that down and then sit back and wait for everybody else to do the work.
Exactly.
So we'd like you to be engaged, and it may be that your principal role is to actually identify what the problems are. It may also be that you're aware of projects where they're coming up to a gateway, or they're coming up to completion, or they may already be in the defects liability period, and therefore there's value in doing some auditing or something like that. So if you're in a position where you could identify those sorts of things, then that might be a useful thing. Anthony.
I don't know whether it's a practical idea, but over the years I've seen dozens and dozens of. I mean, essentially, what we're doing, all these things: health and safety file, fire and emergency file, golden threads. They're collections of information of one form or another. And I wonder, the issue, presumably, and you've just touched on it, is actually having a machine readable information in the first instance.
Yes.
Is there any value in trying to work out, and I use the expression questionnaire widely, about a standard questionnaire we want for a bit of kit, whatever that happens to be, and I don't have a particular view, but to work out, so every bit of kit you put in, this is the information that's required on this form, which is machine readable. If it's a document, it might be a slightly different questionnaire. But even if we haven't got them from the past, if this group set down a principle that in the future, this is the way we could do it, is that feasible? I mean, I've seen dozens of these things. Everybody does it slightly differently, therefore nobody can read anything.
Yeah, so we've actually we've been doing that on these on the fire and safety critical items. So if I just share with you,
George, my question is the actual form, the originate, the set of questions, the same, or
Yes.
is slightly different for each bit? It's the same form, and you fill it in with the various bits. Well, that's where I was coming from. So you've already done it. So it wasn't a silly question.
No, I'll show you.
But I think you've also, I mean, I would think it's a slightly different form, dare I say, or questionnaire for a document as opposed it is to a bit of kit.
Yeah, so what we've actually done is we identified 12 safety critical assets, and then went through a process of roundtable workshops, bringing people that were subject matter experts together to actually identify what information for different purposes they would need. And yeah, it's
hundreds of people.
Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, I suppose my question is that same set of questions could be applied to non-safety critical, couldn't it?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah,
So,
just we targeted the safety critical items first
because they'd be the most complex, yeah.
Yeah,
but is that the sort of thing we ought to publish and say, please start using this?
Correct.
As the sort of ground zero.
Yeah, so we've actually got a 2025 version of this, but let's say, for example, for a fire door, yeah, I'll just show you the level of detail that we've got for a fire door. So what we've done, we've had well over 100 people involved in this. These are the questions that we asked, Anthony.
Yeah.
Was what risk does an asset mitigate? So these are generics. What risk does it mitigate? What risks, what do people do to an asset to stop it from working? What information's needed about an asset to ensure it performs as required? What are the tasks, methods, statements, and procedures needed? Yeah. What level of competence is needed? And how should product changes be recorded? So those are 6 standard questions that we asked across 12 different asset types. And just to show you the detail, the quality of work, which I don't think anybody else has done. So we've got here what a fire door is made up of. What are the risks it's mitigating? What do people do to a fire door to stop it from working, like painting over it or blocking it open? What information do we need to ensure, from a specification point of view? I mean, these are the things that are fairly obvious, where it is and what its door number is, but then, what type of specifications needed. So these all vary according to the asset type, but they are standard questions. What type of door closer is it and all that sort of stuff. And then these are for different purposes. During construction, what information do you need? What do you need during installation? And this level of detail, we've reviewed it 3 times. Oh, sorry, we've reviewed it twice. We reviewed it every 2 years. And then also what procedures are needed. And then, so we got all this, but we've only done it.
Fantastic job. But I suppose my question is, if I pick that up and answered your questions using one format and somebody else answered the same questions from their perspective, would it not end up with 2 different responses, if you're with me?
Yeah, the fundamental thing is actually having the information in a machine readable format that can then be assigned and aligned, and then be able to be interpreted in different applications. Yeah, so for example, somebody that's doing a compliance check for fire doors, they're not interested in what the door closer is. In fact, in my experience, they just don't want to know, because that's just too much detail.
But I mean, coming back to collecting the information in the first instance, is there you've more experience of it than I, but is there any way of standardizing what is expected to be given, which could then be easier read?
I think the way of doing that is to identify what it's going to be needed for, and that's why the use cases are really important. Right. Because then you can say, for example, on the example I gave earlier with the fire alarm system, which circuit is it on, which spaces are being protected by which alarms and which circuits, which is, people would expect the industry to have sorted that out. Sorry if I'm on a bit. Matt?
No, not at all. I mean, it's just I'm just trying to get right to the core of this. If I'm trying to collect information, I need to say to somebody, give me that, nothing else, no more, no less, and it's simple, and so it starts coming in. I mean, even if we started tomorrow, we'd be better off in 5 years' time than what we're collecting at the moment.
Yeah. So where we're going with this, and this is. Tim's going to show some of the things we've been experimenting with in a moment, and that is we want the information that's going into the O&M to actually be coming directly from the manufacturer's data, rather than it being compiled by an installation contractor who may well pick the wrong data sheet. Yeah. And the installation contractor, they should add their information, but the O&M should also have the design criteria.
Correct.
So if we can do this in a way that is automated, and that's where we're going with it, then it means that people can concentrate on the things that can't be automated.
Thank you.
Matt Blue.
Hello. So yeah, I've got 2 companies, one in facade access and height safety as a trade contractor, and one as a fire safety, fire door inspection and maintenance company. So I've got a few insights to share. Firstly, the thing I've found, I worked on the Leadenhall building 10, 12 years ago, and where they were one of the first to really push, that I was aware of, or I was involved in pushing the sort of BIM model and the O&M, but they still used, I think, a company like Dome or Zootech to order the O&M. And I put the BMUs on the roof, and they asked me very specific questions what to provide, which then meant that if they didn't ask me the right questions, then certain information wasn't provided, which I think that's
perfect, Matt. That's exactly where we're coming from with this, right? And the other point is that, with the greatest respect, Dome's a little bit different in the commissioning engineers as well, but probably the people that are collecting the information under the Dome banner may not be commissioning engineers. So
But yeah, they can't be experts in every
exactly
work package.
So therefore, what tends to happen is that it's just an admin exercise. So
Yeah.
if they give you a template to fill in, they don't know whether you filled it in properly or not, and therefore, what our process that we're trying to get to is that we can automate that process, but with knowledge like your knowledge of facade systems, for example, and Gordon's of heating systems, then we can identify how we can then automate that process, but not as a black box that the AI sorts it all out, something that can be overseen by our experts.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing was that, so that was I thought that was a very good project back then in terms of collecting O&M information, but it was British Land Oxford Properties as the client, and they had a consultant team working for them, and then the contractor had their own design team. It was all kind of tier one companies, and so that worked. I think that worked quite well. But then you get residential properties where you get where the developer's the builder, and the client is any one of us who just go and buys a flat. So we haven't got the professional knowledge to know what we need at the time of purchase. So that's why the government, I think, need to really step up, just not talk about golden thread, but actually define what it is for the people that aren't professional.
Sorry, they have. And if you'd seen a couple of comments, HN TAS, Heat Network Technical Assurance Scheme. So most of these big residential blocks that have been built in London, Leeds, Manchester, they're all heat networks because that's the race to decarbonise heating and cooling. But they've basically brought in HN TAS, which becomes regulation. It's not guidance, it's regulation because they're utilitising these heating and cooling systems that are becoming utilities in the same way that gas, electricity, and water is utilitized, and it's scaring the living death out of the marketplace.
Okay, well, maybe I need to.
Now.
Yeah, maybe I need to rephrase. Maybe there is regulation, but
it's getting drafted at the moment. Yeah,
but the leaseholders aren't going to know that whether it's right or wrong until they've got a problem.
I think
but there's data that's in that regulation and guidance and technical standards. There's new devices that's going to avail that information, and that's where even the factoring companies are now kind of getting really nervous because they're factoring and instructing people to look after stuff, but do they have the competence to look after it? There's monitoring of this that kind of shows it when it goes out of kilter. Quite happy to have a separate conversation with you, Matt, or anybody else that's interested in that if you want to have that conversation. We've got a presentation, they're very short. We're probably going to do it to the BISA Next Generation, the under 30 group. It's not irrelevant that you need to be under 30. Some of the people in this room are a wee bit over the 30 mark, but you can come in and sit in it just to get an insight as to what's happening. It's quite interesting and it's really low cost stuff.
Yeah, so just to be clear, Matt, what you just said, what everybody says, the government needs to tell us. Yeah. And the fact is,
I think help leaseholders more than say a professional tenant who's taking 50 floors of a tower block for their offices. They're going to have the funding and the expertise because they'll sub that expertise to a consultant.
Yeah, there needs to be guidance, but the point is, I think Anthony would probably support me on this. The government doesn't know.
No.
Yeah, the knowledge about what's needed is in this room. Yeah, it's in this community. So what we need to do is have people that are knowledgeable, that can say what good looks like, and then we can follow that through. Just like I was showing you there with the, we've got that level of detail. The government wouldn't have known that, a sprinkler system, for example. Just to give you a quick example, a sprinkler system is if it's a dry sprinkler system, and we learned this just in the workshops, it has to be tested once a year. And therefore, people pump water into it to try it to test it out to make sure that it works. The problem is you've then got to get that water out. And the standard way of doing that is to use compressed air. And when you do that, you don't, not all of the water comes out. Some of it is retained. And if it's a metal, if it's metal pipe work, it corrodes, and therefore it leaks. Yeah. So, and that's something that a lot of people didn't know. I mean, I'm talking about, you know, very experienced landlords. So therefore, the next time they fill it up, they've got leaks everywhere.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyway, Martin.
Yeah. Just to, I mean, kind of reinforce what everyone's been alluding to, but also come at it from the MEP designer's perspective. Having a, so first of all, as Peter alluded to earlier, having a solution which can inform MEP designers, contractors, whoever at the beginning of the process as to what it is they need to deliver and whether they have met that criteria before they even send the information off, would it like massively reduce the amount of secondary process required by other parties, because you can already confirm, you know, and if it comes out with like a certificate that says, yes, we've checked all of this and there you go, then, you know, no further actions required from that point, assuming you trust the certificate. But then to facilitate that, as everybody's been alluding to, we need to know in the first instance what it is that's required.
Yes.
And as I mean, I've been through countless BIM execution plans and all the other you know, documents that go with them. And I'm going to use the term very loosely. That information just isn't in the ARs. So everybody's guessing as to, you know, as to what data they're supposed to provide. Further to that, you've also got people who are inexperienced with certain things, like a lot of MEP engineers have never dealt with NRM3 or SFG20. And there are a number of items which go into buildings which either don't have what I would consider a suitable classification for that piece of equipment, or alternatively have many different classifications that it could fall under. And they're just going to pick one at random, basically, because they don't know any better. So all of that kind of mess, as it were, if it were structured into an application or something that can collate that data for them, then for one, you take out the human error of choosing the wrong classification. And further to that, you can also confirm that you have actually met the criteria of what is to be delivered. So
Absolutely.
that in my eyes is kind of the best use of everybody's time and effort, rather than checking later and then saying, oh, you've not done your job properly. It's enabling people to do the job properly from the beginning.
I think what. Thank you, Martin. And certainly one of the things that, I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, as I think a lot of you know, and I get surprised. I had one last earlier, or just the end of last year, where a project that we're working on, we needed to check the Kobe data because it wasn't complete. When we then came to the model to be able to regenerate the Kobe information, they deleted all the sheets, which were the drawings, which is the definition of where all the rooms are. So and I've learned that that's common practice. because the architects don't want the people to be able to regenerate the drawings because of liability. But then that means that the model you can't regenerate a set of floor plans from the model, so that the drawings could have been exported and then manually edited, which I think happens more than you'd think, and therefore there's no integrity between the model and the CAD files. Yeah, Andre's nodded his head there. So these are the sorts of things that a user and then an end client wouldn't know about. Sorry, Andre, we do need to move on because we've got some presentations, but please express your view quickly, if you don't mind.
Sure, I was just going to, like, from Martin's point of, if we then figure out the what, if we then figure out what needs to be in the models, that's where, at least from our point of view, that's what we do on a day-to-day basis, is then digitalize those requirements and making sure that process is integrating everyone that works within those models. They know what information to add at what time, and we can automate all of that. We can automate the check-in. So we've seen that done in many other projects. Once you figure out the what, it becomes easier to digitalize and automate the whole process going forward.
Okay, thank you. Lawrence, great to see you. It's a while since we've spoken.
Yeah, great to see you and you, George. So I'm just going to come in there, picking up from Andre on the automation point. Is that the other that you don't know? I also work with Building Smart International, and we've spent some time developing an information delivery specification, which is a open standard machine readable specification for describing what information requirements we need to have in the model and in data dictionaries. So it's an open standard for that. And what it also does, it does the validation back on the other side. So the tools are there and they're available as open standards. Software companies like Bentley and Autodesk are already using those to put into their software, or there's plugins for so Revit. So you can say, write a specification, send it across. You can design your model. You've automatically checking off exactly, you're checking off the data attributes that you need, or the clearances or tolerances that you need within your model, if it's geometry related. And then you come out the other side. You then check your IFC model file to see if it meets your requirements. So that round trip is already there as a open standard.
But only for things that are modelled.
It can also be data as well. You can just do it with you can just validate it against the Building Smart Data Dictionary if you want. So if it's simply data related, you can do that. So
but if there are things like door closers that aren't modelled, then that information would be in a O&M or a health and safety file, typically.
I understand, but because it's simply XML based, if there's a requirement for it, and you can check again, you can check that that health and safety file contains that information, then you can make that link between them. But it needs to be structured. You've got to have structure either side. You've got structure as an input and structure as an output. If you have that on either side, then it works. I'm
going to have to call it. We need to move on because we've got some things to show you as well. So I think it would be good to do. Margaret, is it quick? I don't mean that rude. I think we've had great engagement.
No, carry on, George. Carry on. You carry on. I'm on a train.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, Tim, could you do two things? One is, could you just talk through what we did in terms of reverse engineering the help desk information?
Yeah. Right. Okay. Hello, everybody. Right. Yeah. Okay. So for those who've been on other calls, we've got about 12,000 records, nearly 13,000 records from a help desk system that we produced that was run for about 10 years. with I think at its peak it was running on 40 buildings. So we've just got off the help desk tickets and some basic data such as an ID for which building it was in, where if they'd actually identified the location of where it was in the building, any comments, and then some basic classifications that were in the ticket system, and also the service level agreement, the SLA. So that's how many hours they had to respond, and then which company it was. And then as we started this meeting, one question was asked about a situation where the security card noticed a leak. I thought, oh, well, that's fun, isn't it? So I've got in here an agent, and I just asked it to do a task on this data set. Well, first of all, we did a task on it, which was tell me more about this information in the context of healthcare. And what it did was actually then add in the statutory regulations under which these tickets would relate to. But in terms of this conversation that we've had here, I said, oh, well, wouldn't that be interesting to see whether it could tell me what skill or trade was needed for that particular ticket, and then what information would it need to be, would the person need to be able to have to be able to go and sort it out. So that's leading into that sort of discovery. So this is really a sort of alluding in a way to, can you use AI agents to actually build that chain of, we need to know this. And I'm going to surprise George by going to a slide, some slides that I did years ago. And this was to do with, I'll just do present in Teams so it's a bit better. And this was to do with how this interaction could possibly happen, using agents at the AI agents on the other end. So typically it would be, oh, hang on, it's going right from the beginning, isn't it? So let's just get to this one. There we go. So this would be happening on a phone. Now, down the right-hand side, so this was done in the 2019 sort of era, where I was building language understanding models. So a lot of this is really saying, this is how it works, and this is how it's thinking, and this is how the data models. Now, we've moved on since then, because it's a heck of a lot easier to now get these things working, and you'll understand there. So I got some examples, which was how you would interact with an agent that was to do room bookings. So you'd have a conversation, and it would have to find out and come back with an answer. And that was just about booking a room in a healthcare setting. And then maintenance. Now, in this case, it was where would be the source of the information to be able to answer that question? What would it need to know that it could search to come back with a reliable set of information upon how to do things? So it's basically, it's a gopher. It's something that is looking and it says, I understand what you're asking. I need to ask you a few questions, because, for instance, if you said there's a leak on the first floor toilet, in the men's toilet, and it was in a building where the men's toilets are a multi-story building where the men's toilets were every other floor, it would obviously say, well, which floor is it on? So there's a thing called fulfillment, which is sort of this method of doing bots in the old days, but it's still the same. You would still need to know this information before you could actually go and say, I know what we need to do here. So that was the one for a typical maintenance task of cleaning the oven, because I was working with information. I was testing it out on my house. So obviously these, I think at the time my mother was getting her oven cleaned. So that's why I probably put that one in. But here's another one where we're sort of looking and saying, well, when does it need doing? And therefore, what information you need to. Now, the thing that was asked before, which was, when you do know the chain of information that you do require, how can you actually build it and resource, and who's going to put all that in? And that's one of the things that we've been experimenting with, which is extracting the information out of product literature, maintenance manuals, operation manuals, installation manuals, data sheets, and saying, is there enough data here to build it all up so that I can actually build a set of data about the jobs or the tasks, and then break those down and say, well, you need to do this, this, and this. And that's easy to do it on a product, and it becomes more complicated when it comes to a system. So if you're saying, oh, we've got a leaky tap, well, you've got to go and switch know where to go and switch it off at the mains, because there's pressure in the system. So you've got to do that. And in a complicated building, there's going to be lots of isolation valves all over the place. So you can isolate a flat, or you need to isolate this floor for sorting out the toilets on this floor or whatever. So those are the sort of critical things. Now, what occurred to me during this conversation, which is why it's so good, is that if that information isn't there, you need to run these scenarios before you hand the building over, because
Exactly.
if those scenarios will expose that, well, we can't actually answer that question because it's not, the information isn't there. And that's the key thing I want to sort of get over, is why it's so important for people to build situations, real situations like the help desk. That help desk is reactive maintenance, and then you've got planned preventative maintenance, but you still need to know all the information to do either of them. So the scenarios are absolutely critical to building up and testing out and building sample data sets so that we can test out and say, well, we know the scenario works, and then work back and say, well, how did we get that information? Can we automate it? Can we use AI agents to actually go and ferret and get this information together so that it will, and then run it through the tests. So the tests aren't just tick boxes; they're real questions that say, and then you can use AI to actually reinvent a scenario. So you can say, take this scenario and that one and make some new ones out. And I've done this for when we were testing out our ticketing system. I said, I need 20 tickets on a school to do with this. Create me them. So it would create me these tickets. And that would be an awful lot of coffee makers get broken in the staff room, apparently. But there you go. It's the sort of thing. So even once you've got it, we've got generative. They do this a lot in data science. Is that create new data from old data. But it's to be able to test, particularly if you're training object recognition models and stuff like that, and they can create such photorealistic scenario situations that they can then just create a scene and then test the AI. I mean, people probably heard about some of the robots that can. So they're building these robots, these humanoid robots, but they're being trained on how to walk and balance and do things before they hit the real world. They're being trained in an artificial environment, but at speed. Which is amazing. But we could do the same sort of thing with buildings. I don't see why not. We just need to know what we want to be able to achieve at the end. At the end, we want really good outcomes, and everybody's balking at this seemingly large mountain that's appearing in front of them as how are we going to be able to do this with, people can't even fill in a simple spreadsheet, or they put the wrong data in. And that's where we're also looking at, I mean, I'm getting AI agents to reorganize my desktop, a project folder system, and put the files that I already had into the right place, and spotting when it does things wrong. And it's doing a pretty good job. It's a start.
Okay, Gordon, is it quick?
It is very quick. You mentioned regular maintenance and planned preventative maintenance. Old data, condition-based maintenance is where we're at. Computer maintained managed systems. You're basically getting regularity of systematic data sets, not somebody's input of saying, I looked at it and it's fine. It's subjective. You've got to get systematic data, and that's where a lot of this stuff's moving in the right direction, to digitize it, because it cannot tell a lie. So components basically do exactly the same function, exactly the same time, so you sort out your good, your bad, your ugly. Focus on your ugly, leave your good to be
Yeah. So Gordon, the interesting thing with that is that I think what you're saying is absolutely right, and that is that what most of the industry is doing maintenance in a historic context, right?
And make no mistake, it's what they've always done.
No,
and
no,
some of them are making a lot of money out of it,
Yeah.
but it ain't resolving the problems.
Exactly. Yeah. So the technology now, as you say, I remember 20 years ago, BISRIA came out with a report that said that things go wrong just after they've been maintained. Yeah.
Yeah. So somebody's just pushed that valve a little bit too tight or not tight enough.
So the conclusion that BISRIA came up with, which is the Building Services Research and Information Association, by the way, so it's the right body for doing this. They identified that really, as Gordon said there, we should be working to condition-based maintenance and improving reactive maintenance. And what's happening now is some of the big FM contractors, they're moving away from using applications like Maximo to using Salesforce. Now, the reason Salesforce is being used, I believe, is because it's the CRM. And therefore, they can react much quicker. Yeah, so I think that's a really important point. Thank you, Gordon.
Yeah, well, just to emphasise how this is happening in the rest of the industry, George. It's the same thing that was happening with electric cars and combustion cars. Garages don't like them because they can't make money out of you because the cars are now saying, well, I'll tell you when I need to fix something because I've got so many sensors. I'll tell you when something is not working properly, and it'll get to a point where it says I've booked you in, somebody's going to come around and fix it.
You used to have to go and take your car back after 1,000 miles because you have to run it in. You're now literally buying a brand new car and it will go 20,000 miles before you service it. Or the sensors will tell you that there's something not quite there. I mean, it's the same stuff.
Well, the one I had one for 4 years and I only had to replace two things on it.
Tim, sorry. We've only got 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure that we get an outcome from this. I think it's been great that so many people have put forward in. What we're going to do is follow up on a one-to-one basis with you. I'll send out an invite, but if we could have a one-to-one chat just to, probably 15, 20 minutes, just to understand where you would like to fit into things, and then we can start to bring these things together. Okay. But one of the first contributions that we've got is this automated way of validating the health and safety files. Now, the reason we're doing this is that it's become very clear that there's some great information, as Lawrence was saying earlier, in the BIM models, but the trouble is that's only probably half of the information that's needed from an asset management point of view, because a lot of the information is held in schedules in the O&M, in the health and safety file in the O&M. So what we've done is we've put together a simple validation process that what we're looking for is partners within this group and elsewhere where we can do this. So the first thing that we've got is a validation tool. So what we can do is validate the information that is in the BIM models against a set criteria. And we're not saying that we've got to use the COBie validator for that, but that's a tool that we've got available that we can make available to the group to see if this is something, well, for the group to be able to validate their BIM data against that. And that will enable you to extract from the information a set of the assets that have actually been installed. The next, though, is the O&M. So the process is that a competent person uploads the or provides the health and safety file. And the first thing that it does, it checks to make sure that the documents that are mentioned in the registers and in schedules is actually in the pack. Now, that might seem a daft thing to do, but our experiences, and we've now done probably 7 or 8 of these, we find that quite regularly that's not the case. Just slight differences, but the point is that they're different. So that's the first pass. The second stage is actually reading the content of each work package and then comparing it with the pre-agreed criteria, and then producing a dashboard of pass and fail for each work package. Now, I sent you out this morning a video of how we're doing that, and we're really quite excited about it, because when we've done this work manually, and all of this we've done manually in the past, it can take weeks and months to actually do. It's an enormously complex thing to be able to do that analysis and cross comparison. And what we're able now to do is automate much of that, but we also want to make sure it's being done by people that can oversee it. And the third bit is it produces a report per work package that details what's missing and what needs addressing. Now, the interesting thing about this now is that if that's done during the defects liability period by the client, or also by the main contractor, because it may be the main contractor that needs to be checking what the subcontractors have given them, it can be covered under the defects liability cover. So that's something I think that is worth looking at, because it means that the quicker this can be done. So if you're aware of projects that are going through that stage, then speak to us, because that may be something that we can do together.
Makes sense. Yes, I want to actually do you have I did. That's the
Sorry,
cartoon
can you go on chat? Mute, please. Yeah.
So
And
George,
then-
just to be clear, the number 1 is done automatically, whereas number 2 involves humans doing it. Is that right?
The majority of the work is done. Well, sorry. The first one is relatively, yes, that's completely automated.
Okay.
Right. The second one is also automated, but what we want to do is to do that with people who know what the answer should look like. So in other words, the people in this group.
Yeah.
So you know, an example is that we've now run it on several different types of projects where we've got information on offices, on residential. We've done it on a university, but we're going to come across projects where, you know, for example, colleague earlier was talking about facades. Now, we may not have somebody that is adequately expert in facades.
Right.
So therefore, or lifts or escalators or whatever. Now, when we come across that, or heat network systems, Gordon, so to be able to identify what good looks like in that, and we on that particular when we come across something like that, we need to be able to talk to the team and say, we've got somebody that understands fire engineering, for example. So the objective there, Richard, is to be able to have this as an expert oversight of what the system's automatically doing.
And that would be the task force doing it.
Correct. Yeah, and members of the task force who are willing to be proactive and willing to also promote it, because we need this as a business, as it were, to be able to be promoted. And certainly from the information that we're getting, the feedback we're getting, health and safety files are being produced. There's a legal requirement for a health and safety file to be produced. I think Margaret can confirm that on any project where there's been more than one contractor involved. And Pav Singh from Arcadis told me that that's called an F10. So the F10 is the notification to the health and safety executive. Now, the problem is that you produce a new health and safety file and it's incorporating just what's been done. But if stuff's been taken out, nobody's recording that. So therefore, you're ending up with a number of health and safety files. Anthony, I think, can probably confirm that as well. I've got one last bit on this, if I may, Gordon.
Sorry, yeah.
So the point is, what we should therefore have is a list of all of the assets that have actually that the delivery teams say have been installed. Okay, so the final bit of the validation is actually using reality capture to then compare what was actually installed with what is documented as being installed. So that's the final bit of the validation. Gordon.
Just very briefly, George, sorry to interrupt. HNTAS, I know it's heat networks, but forget about what the process is. HNTAS and this new regulation with heat networks is not just for the new stuff that's being built or the stuff that's going through construction at the moment or the stuff that's in design. It's the 17,000 heat networks and communal heating systems that are presently in the United Kingdom that the DESNZ regulation is going to cover. So this is basically it's a whole new opportunity. And it's also, I mean, at the end of the day, it is commercial opportunity for people to go in and start to meter and monitor these positions. So there should not be, in my opinion, the level of fear that I'm picking up. But the fear's coming because they are a wee bit concerned about their competence in installing this stuff. Well, they should be. They shouldn't. So, if they're struggling with competence to install, and you're buying your house, as was mentioned by one of the other residents, no wonder the government have got involved in it.
Did you say 1,700 or 17,000?
17,000.
Okay, so does that mean there'd need to be 17,000 health and safety files?
That's why we're going to have this discussion. I'm not a health and safety knowledge expert, but I would suggest there will need to be. There's a lot of work that's going to come out of this. However, unfortunately, who's going to pay for them?
Absolutely.
It's a kind of Grenfell moment in heat networks, but it goes back to your colleague from Yorkshire Housing Association, the residential one that we did. They were decommissioning heat networks. They were decommissioning them because they were fearful of the obligations and the onerous obligations about maintaining them. But that's because it's putting pressure on the industry. Margaret's probably got something to say on it rather than
Franco.
Well, just a quick comment on point 2A, validation process step 2A. Check that the files that are stated in registers and schedules exist. Right. My point is that maybe the registers and schedules are wrong, incomplete.
But how would you know?
Well, that's, having spent some decades in project management, and, I know that scope creep is the enemy number one. So we must establish a method to verify what complete means. This is a big question, believe me. Big question.
No, I agree. But at the moment, we need to work with what we're getting. So the point is, at the moment.
All right. So if you want a quick answer, because we are running out of time.
Yeah.
In my opinion, a matrix that has systems and spaces, right, indicating which system should exist in each space is a very good starting point. But I repeat, this is a big subject.
I agree, but what you're talking about there is the information being created properly.
Yes, but if the validation is about verifying if files that exist in the list have been delivered, No, you have to be sure that the list itself is fully comprehensive.
I agree, and that comes back to the thing that Tim probably now doesn't have time to show, but you know, if people want to hang on a little bit, he can perhaps show it. What we're actually talking about as well as the auditing bit, what we're trying to do is automate the creation bit. So, Margaret.
Yes, just to say, I'm not sure if you've seen the chat. You've been leading, so you may have not seen the chat. But as you were saying earlier on, you're working with the HSE, looking at what's got to be in the health and safety. As you all know, I do lead the health and safety expert panel. I have led for many years, the Institute of Civil Engineers. The requirements are set out in Appendix 4 of CDM very clearly, A to H, what should be in a health and safety file. So there's no need, it's there. It's legal requirement. And the reason why I did this project for the HSE in 2017 is that they found that not many people were keeping the health and safety file before we ever heard about Grenfell, before, weren't keeping up to date. And so the HSE said, well, why is this the case? So we went to the Law Society, the Land Registry, Institution of Civil Engineers, Structural Engineers, all the other, RICS, and basically the requirements are there in law, and then guidance, must keep it up to date. But what it didn't do is set out how. And so along comes the golden thread, yeah? And we have, yes, we've got to keep it up to date. And it's not just about health safety files. I'm a civil engineer, obviously working in health safety. But as you've rightly said, and somebody said, it's all asset information. It's got to be kept. The right information has got to be kept in the right place at the right time. And as I said, the other comment I made is you must use the relevant duty holders. Everyone has got duty to keep information, to provide information and update information. And at the end of the project, it's not just about the contractor giving the as-built drawings or whatever. The designer should check. It's not just about the contractor. The designer should check that it's. I've had many times where the designer said, "Oh no, that's not what I put in my original drawings. Who told you to change my to change my drawings and put something else in?" So all the duty holders are already mandated. Even professional duty code of conduct to keep information, put information, and make it available. And then again, as I said earlier on, I don't know how many clients there are on this group, but I don't know if you're going to do a client group, but clients, for some reason, if only they set out what they want, put it down, and hold people to it, we have a fighting chance, wouldn't we?
Yeah. So I think the thing is, Margaret, people have been asking that for 10 years, right? And different clients, they don't know. Yeah. And they then rely on
so if they don't know, they should get people who do know.
Yeah. They also no, but they go and ask people who they rely on, right? And those people, in some cases, are giving them the wrong advice.
That's my point.
So
you
that's
should
why
ask the duty holders, not anybody.
This group,
the duty holders.
Yeah, sorry to talk over you, Margaret, but that's why this group, I think, is important. Because
right, I'm going to talk over everybody because we've gone past the time. No, we're losing a lot of people now, not unreasonably. And I do want to do a last call for anybody who wants to get involved in this, further involved in this, possibly in a commercial way. Put forward in the chat, please. Put forward in the chat, and we'll contact you within the next week or so. Sorry, George, but we need to get that done.
No, I agree with you, and I think this has been a very good session, in my view, and certainly I think we've had a lot of interaction. So I think there's things that we can follow up on, and maybe another one of these, as soon. Is there any chance that would anybody like to do one of these before Easter, before next Friday?
George,
it's too tight.
It's too tight. Don't. Seriously,
okay.
Don't do it. Do it in like 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay. And then
Yeah,
in the meantime, we can pick
yeah,
up with
because
people one to one.
we've got there's a lot of people who weren't able to come today because it was quite short notice. So let's give them a chance to come along as well. Remember, we've got over 150 people signed up for this, so let's give them a chance to get involved too.
Okay, well, that's interesting. If we've got that many people already engaged, that's excellent. And this group has got the first bite at the cherry.
Absolutely. So we can you can get some invites out over the next early next week for some one-to-ones and progress everything from there.
Cool. Okay. Does anybody else have any observations before we close it down? Jonathan?
Not kind of observations, but just on what Richard just mentioned about Easter, and I can't remember which session it is because I declined it because I'm going away on my way to somewhere for Easter. But there's a session next, I think virtually this time next week, and because it was quite close to Easter, I'm on leave and things like that. But I think it was one of the AI sessions, is it?
We've got 4 sessions next week, haven't we, George? The 4 again.
Yeah. I just wondered because it's so close to Easter whether we're on turnout because I know quite a few. I've shared it with one of my colleagues, but I just wondered whether there will be quite a few absentees.
Yeah, there probably will because it's the AI is the Thursday and obviously it's Good Friday the next day, so people will be taking that bit longer holiday. But it's fine. Everybody can catch up. We do a 15-minute podcast summary of all meetings. It's all on the website. Obviously, transcripts, high point notes, link to the video, you name it. So it's there if anybody wants to see it.
That's a really good point, actually, though, Jonathan. The thing that Tim was going to show today, which is the process of automating the production of the O&M, we can probably cover in the AI meeting next week, can't we, Tim? Yeah. Good. Okay.
So, Jonathan, if you're going to miss next week, be aware that it will be on the website, so you will be able to catch up on that.
I think it's also the case, Jonathan, that I know how interested you are in this, and we can perhaps catch up on a one-to-one over it.
Yeah, that's probably better, isn't it?
Good. Okay. Any other observations, anybody, before we close?
I think you need to think about a forum, an institute, a forum to actually present some of your findings to, professionally, building, I don't know, a conference of some sort, because there's a lot of good stuff that's come out of these discussions.
Yes.
And in those forums, you have got, the big client managers, the big, directors and so on. I don't know if that's something you already have in your sites, but I think this wonderful collection of people who know what should be done, but it's obviously not happening. You do need to have some sort of forum to present to that. The white paper, for example, is that going to be presented to a forum of any sort?
It's a good idea. It's just a matter of organising that. To be honest with you, Margaret, I mean, we're talking with the Construction Leadership Council, or the
exactly, yeah.
So that would be maybe a mechanism to do that together.
Yeah.
Let's
you've
think
also
about
got CIC as well, Construction Leadership Council and Construction Industry Council. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. Okay. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. If you've got any projects that you would like us to look at on this, or that you want, the objective here is to really make this something that you're involved with, that we can then offer as a collaborative service. So just let us know if you've we can do that on the one-to-ones. Good. Okay. I hope that's been useful.
Cheers,
really
guys.
exciting, this stuff, isn't it? It's really the pace with which it's going is extraordinary.
Thanks everyone. Cheers, George.
Yeah. Cheers.